is Ellen Kapuska. I'm a board member and secretary of Stay at Home in Wilton. And of course, Dave Hartman needs no introduction because he's a friendly face at so many of our community events. But for the record, I'd like to say that he was born and raised right here in town.
Oh.
He's been on the force for 22 years. And he is currently the president of the Wilton Police Benevolent Association, a position he's held for the last 6 years. His activities with the community include, but are not limited to, Coffee with a Cop, Tip a Cop, Swamp Romp, Special Olympics Torch Run, St. Baldrick's event, and Wilton Safe Rides. And most recently, you may have seen him at any one of the vaccine clinics in town.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So our very own Lieutenant Dave Hartman is going to tell us how to protect ourselves from being scammed.
Welcome, Dave.
Well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for everyone for having me, and thank you for being here. Just by a quick show of hands, because I'm looking at everybody on my screen right now, can I just sort of see how many people were at my presentation about scams 3 years ago? I see 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 people. Okay, great. So this presentation that I'm going to give today is basically the same presentation, but one of the components that I'm going to add to it is towards the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the scams we've seen in relation to COVID and COVID-19, things along those lines. Those scams aren't as common as some of these other scams, which I talked about last time, but which are still around today. But COVID-19 scams are something that is new and something that we have seen. Some of them are sort of waning off because of the vaccine, but we can get into that towards the end of my presentation. So let me work on sharing my screen here and see if I can get this right. Share sound. All right. So some of the stuff today that we're going to talk about, or I'm going to discuss, is certain ways how to avoid financial fraud or scams for seniors. But to be brutally honest, this isn't specific to seniors. This is specific to anybody, because the reality is these scammers don't care if it's somebody who's 65 versus somebody who's 25 or any age in between. It really doesn't matter. They're just looking for somebody that they can convince to give them your money. Going to real quick, going to run over the history, a real brief talk about some history of scams, 1 or 2 quick scam statistics. 1 or 2 of them is specific to Connecticut. The others are nationally. We're going to go into some of the current scams that I've investigated, as well as the officers here in our department, and some of the other scams we're hearing in the area. We'll talk about what to look for or what to listen for to be able to determine that you are speaking to somebody who's trying to scam you. Because that is the key. If you know somebody's trying to scam you, you can stop it. And that's the key to preventing yourself from being scammed. And then what to actually do if you find yourself in a position where you have been scammed, or unfortunately, it wasn't until after you gave out personal information that you realized, you know what, this just probably is not legitimate. How do I go about protecting myself? How do I go about protecting my money? What do I need to do as far as the police are concerned? And we're going to talk about that as well. So the real quick history, obviously scams have been around. It's somebody who wants to get rich quick, somebody that's has come up with some scheme that will convince you to give them their fund for whatever reason. Typically they want a better life for themselves, and this is the way that they know how to do it. Some of these scams that we're going to go over are extremely creative. And if they had just taken the energy and the time that they put into working these scams and put it into honest work, they probably would have done very well working for a company or a business, because some of these things are extremely creative. Obviously, we all know about the Ponzi scheme. Charles Ponzi, back in 1882, when he was born, he was a swindler in the US and Canada. Back in the 1920s, he would promise investors, as you can see on the screen there, a 50% return within 45 days and 100% return in 90 days. That's amazing. Who's heard of 100% return in 90 days? That, I mean, does it happen? Sure. I guess it could happen if you pick the right stock. But the reality is that's almost too good to be true. And that should have been a red flag. It is almost too good to be true. So what he would do is similar. He would take money from one investor to cover previous investors that were looking to get out of whatever scheme it was that he was putting forward. And his scheme ran for over a year before it collapsed, and it cost investors $20 million. Now, does that sound like a familiar scheme that we've all heard of? You bet it. Let's see here. Modern day scam artists. Who do we have here? Bernie Madoff, right?
Right.
So Bernie Madoff, who just recently passed away in prison, I think it was within the last week or two, took more than $64.8 billion from 4,800 different clients. There were a lot of people here in the state of Connecticut as well that were affected by Bernie Madoff schemes, including police departments here in the state of Connecticut. A lot of police departments, or several police departments, had invested their money through Bernie Madoff, their retirement accounts. And when Bernie took their money, they lost it. Back in 2020, scam artists stole approximately $3.3 billion here in the United States. I think that's probably an underreported number. I think it's probably higher because I think a lot of people don't come forward to mention that they've been scammed because they don't want they feel that they're going to be embarrassed if they say, hey, I was tricked out of my money. So I think that number's low. And then in 2020, the Federal Trade Commission received more than 2.1 million fraud complaints. Again, I think that's low. I think it's probably higher. And when you factor in all the different types of complaints the FTC receives for fraud and other similar crimes, it's probably up over 4 million, I'm guessing. So what are some of the scams that we're going to just skim over today? Because to be honest with you, I can't sit here and go into every scam into depth because they are very complicated and there are so many of them. So we're going to go over some of the more popular ones. We're going to talk about what phishing scams are, telemarketer tech support scams. As you can see on the screen there, data breaches, fallout scams, tax fraud, emailing, credit card skimming, which is still a big one, lottery scams, family member scams. I've seen quite a few of those recently, and then home improvement scams. So what I'd like to do during this presentation is I'm going to go over the different types of scams and talk a little bit about them. What I'd recommend is why don't at the end of the presentation, if you have questions about the specific types of scams, why don't we wait till the end for questions, just so I can get through the material, because I know if Will comes, he's limited with time. And I want to make sure that we get the information out to you. And I will leave you with my contact information at the end so you can always reach out to me and we can talk about concerns that you may have on a personal level. So the first one I'm going to discuss here is the phishing scam. It's one of the more common computer identity theft schemes. They try to trick you into giving your personal information over the web, through emails. They ask you for personal information, and many times they try to come across as a legitimate company. So for instance, you might get an email that says, I'm warning you that access to your account has been terminated due to inactivity. Or they want you to reconfirm your payment details or reconfirm your personal information to make sure that it's up to date. And the information that they really are looking to get is right there. Your name, your date of birth, your address, your social security number, and your bank accounts, and possibly the passwords to your bank accounts. Because this will give them access to those accounts and to your identity, which is what they want as well. Because there's so many different types of scams that they can do once they have all of your personal information. So what I'm going to say is if you get an email from a company that you do business with, and it looks wrong, it looks off, it's asking for this personal information, take a step back. Just pause for a second and say, is this really the company reaching out to me, or is this a scam? Because I'm going to show you some emails here. So here are some fake emails. If I can get it to work. Okay, so here's a Netflix email. I have a Netflix account. I have other family members that have Netflix accounts. I'm sure many of you may have a Netflix account. But if Netflix were to send this email to me, and this is a legitimate scam email that you're looking at, is this something that you should click on? You know, they recently failed to validate your payment information. And now they're asking you to click this link. There's several things I want to point out to you here, several things that I have concern with an email like this. This email is not addressed to me personally. If you fail to validate or confirm my payment information, you know who I am. And if we do business together, you should be addressing me by my name. This person clearly doesn't know who I am. This is just a generic email that's sent out. So that should be a concern. One of the other things, can you guys see the mouse on my screen where I'm moving it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So right here where it says click to verify your account is where they're looking to get you to click on the screen. Sometimes what you can do is take that mouse and just hover it over the link, and it will come, it may say Netflix on there, but it may have this weird link that it would go to that has nothing to do with Netflix. That should be a red flag as well. Because if it doesn't go to Netflix, then obviously they're sending you to some third-party account where they're going to take your information. Here's a scam email from Bank of America. Looks pretty legit. If you glance at it quickly, I mean, it says Bank of America on the top. It's got the Bank of America logo right here. Again, one of the things I want to point out is up here at the top where it's from, they wrote in Bank of America, but what's this address right here?
Yeah.
It's Comcast. That's not Bank of America, I don't think. That would be a red flag. Also down here, they're sending it to undisclosed recipients. Well, again, if we do business together, you're going to send your email address to me. Dear Mr. Hartman, or Dear David Hartman, not to undisclosed recipients. Right here, misspellings. Here they're asking you to sign into your account. And if you took the mouse and were to hover it over this link, this yellow box is what it shows as the website that it's going to send you to, which has nothing to do with Bank of America. So that's a way to determine that it's a scam. One of the other types of scams that we commonly see are telemarketer or tech support scams. A lot of times you'll get a phone call, and up on your caller ID, it'll say Best Buy, let's say, or it'll say, you pick a name of a company, and it'll come up on your caller ID screen that that's who the call is coming from. They may say this is computer services or Google services, Microsoft, and they'll say, we've detected a virus in your computer. If you want to pay the $350 fee, we can have the virus removed from your computer. That should be alarming to me because the last time I checked, I don't have anybody else that has access into my computer. Now I have a virus removal software on my computer, but they don't call me. They don't send me anything. The computer program automatically updates on my computer and it runs a virus check on my computer. So you should not have anyone ever calling you, telling you that they've discovered a virus on your computer and they can help you fix it for anything, for any amount of money. A lot of times you'll see lately, people will call up and say they're the IRS and you owe the IRS money. And it'll say IRS on your caller ID. One of the things that you need to be aware of, first off, the IRS is never going to call you. They don't. They send you letters in the mail. But two, scammers today have technology that allows them to put anything they want on the caller ID. So if they want to say, it's the Wilton Police Department, they could put something on there that says the Wilton Police Department, and you don't really know who it is. So a caller ID is a good piece of information it's a good tool to possibly give you an idea of who's calling, especially if you're expecting the phone call or if you recognize the person on the other end. But don't take it for face value that just because the caller ID says IRS, that's the IRS. You need to verify, because especially with the IRS, they do not call you. All right, I have a short video here. See if it works.
Urgent warning about a growing IRS scam targeting people all over the country this tax season. The
A thumbs up
FBI
if
is
you hear it.
issuing an alert this morning about phony phone calls claiming you owe money. Here's ABC's Clayton Sandell with what you need to know.
This morning, the IRS warning to be on high alert for threatening phone calls like this.
Before there is an arrest warrant issued on your name with the county sheriff officer's office, I want you or your attorney to give us a call back.
Just in time for tax season, callers pretending to be IRS agents claiming you owe money and to pay up now.
Be prepared to face the legal consequences, as the issue at hand is extremely serious and time-sensitive.
It's happening in all 50 states. Nearly 3,000 people have already been victims, scammed out of more than $14 million. Here's how it works. The scammers want you to go to a store and spend hundreds of dollars on a prepaid cash card like this. Then they want the code off the back of the card. But the moment you give it to them, all that money, your money, is gone. The scammers often call from overseas, disguising their numbers to look like they're really from the IRS. They leave those numbers on voicemail messages demanding you call back. So we did. Am I in trouble with the IRS?
Yes, sir. So you owed $1,498.37 to the IRS. And I'm going to proceed it to the sheriff officer, and within the next hour, there will be a doorstep to handcuff you and put you behind the bars.
The IRS says it will never call demanding immediate payment, never require payment with prepaid cash cards, or ask for credit card numbers, and they won't threaten to arrest you. If anyone does, the IRS says, just hang up. For Good Morning America, Clayton Sandell, ABC News, Denver.
All right, so that was a good video to give you a general idea of one of the ways that people are being scammed. And they gave some numbers there, $14 million already, and they gave the idea that only 3,000 or 3,300 people have been scammed. I can tell you that's an older video. A lot more people have been scammed than that, and millions dollars more have been stolen from people. And the scam obviously works because the scam artists are still doing it year after year after year. If it was a scam that didn't produce results for them, they would move on to the next Ponzi scheme or the next scheme or the next scam or whatever it is that they're working on. So before, when I told you about phishing scams, phishing emails, and I told you about the information that they're looking to obtain with your name, your date of birth, your social security number, your address, like bank account numbers. This is a scam that we've seen for a while. I haven't heard about it in the past year, but it doesn't mean that it's not still occurring. So one of the things that they do is individuals will file fraudulent tax returns for people coming into tax season. And the reason they do that is because they can set up the return so that they're going to, you or they are going to get a refund. And then they have the IRS process the payment and send the money to either a specific address or a specific bank account, and they steal those funds. And then when you go to file your taxes, the IRS says you can't file on these social security numbers. We've already accepted returns for these social security numbers. So one of the things that people are doing now is having to argue with the IRS that somebody filed a fraudulent tax return in my name, and I need to file my legitimate tax return. It's not necessarily stealing money from people who file the returns, it's stealing it from the government, but it's causing you problems because now you have to fight with the IRS to file your legitimate tax return, and then do a bunch of changes with your social, with your your credit reporting to make sure that they're not ruining your credit or opening other accounts in your name, and ruining credit rating or taking out loans on your name. I know this is a little blurry, and it's because it was on a smaller screen, and I think when I enlarged it to put it on this screen, but this is a legitimate scam letter somebody sent pretending to be the IRS. And again, I'm going to go back to a lot of the points that I pointed out in my previous emails from phishing emails. Up here, it says, "Dear taxpayer." Obviously, if the IRS is reaching out to me, they know who I am. They want my money, right? They're going to have in here, there's misspellings. And also the IRS here will never threaten you. So failure to do so will result in freezing your bank account, garnishing of the wages, and any property or assets you may own. This is not the typical first type of letter you would ever get from the IRS. So if you were to get a letter like this, that should send up a red flag. Here's a letter that residents have received in the mail from Publishers Clearinghouse, well-known organization we're all quite familiar with, right? Well, it looks to be pretty legitimate. Down here, you have all these company logos: Walmart, JCPenney, Mega Millions, Reader's Digest. It looks to be a legitimate Publishers Clearinghouse letter saying, you know, you've won. But the question that I always have to ask people when I hear somebody's been scammed for lottery is, did you play the lottery? Did you play Publishers Clearinghouse? If you didn't play, you can't win. You know that old saying with the Connecticut Lotto, you got to play to win? It's true. If you didn't play, you're not going to win. There is no magical lottery out there where they just randomly put names into a hat and pull them out and say, hey, you've won X amount of dollars. You were one of the random names pulled. If you play it, you know about it. So if you get a call about a lottery winning, do not give them money and do not fall for it. I did, unfortunately, years ago, investigate a crime where somebody was called and told they won the Jamaican lottery, and they were scammed out of $67,000, because every week they would send more money because they were told, we need money to get the claim through the processing. We need to. So the person just kept sending money, and before we knew it, it was $67,000 before we called. So here's another Mega Millions. You know, like I said, did you play Mega Millions? First off, does anybody here play lottery? I don't.
Really?
I got to tell you, not much. I play lottery. I play Mega Millions every once in a while. And when you buy a Mega Millions ticket, they don't know who you are. I don't give them my name. I don't give them my address or any information about me. I buy the ticket, and that ticket I hold on to, and that shows that I purchased it. And I can write my name on the back. So you should never receive any letters from any lottery companies, whether it's Mega Millions or Powerball or the Jamaican Lotto, unless you know you've played it. And then in here, you can see that there are a lot of misspellings. It's not the typical type of work you would see from a reputable company who cares about their image and cares about portraying themselves to be professional. And it's not that these scam artists don't want to try to be professional at what they do, but many of them are not fluent in the English language. So they end up putting a lot of misspellings in their work. And that stands out to us who read these letters and can say, you know what? A company wouldn't write a letter like that to me. All right, moving on. This is what we call credit card and debit card skimming machines. I hope you've never seen one of these. We do get them in town every now and then. What it is a device on the left-hand side of the screen here that is made to look like the area of an ATM machine where you put your debit card into, when you want to, withdraw money. And what they do is they place this green piece right over top of this other one, and it looks like this. It looks like a legitimate piece of the ATM, but it's not. What it is a separate electronic device. So when you go and put your debit card into the machine, it is going through this green skimming device and into the legitimate machine. And then you're hitting the buttons, and down here, you can see that, well, it's hard to see, there's a camera there that's pointing at the numbers. So as you go to put in your code, they've already recorded all the information off your magnetic strip because you put it through their skimming device. And now they've recorded your PIN because they had a camera there watching you punching your PIN code. So these are things to be wary of. And it's not just at ATMs. These are things that you may see here, like at the supermarket. So if you go through the self-checkout at the supermarket or a department store or wherever you may go where these devices could be, and you may not have a business associate from the company there, gas stations are prime locations. This looks like the punch code for the credit card machine. Well, it's a punch code. It fits over the real punch code on the credit card machine, and it records all your information. And again, your card is going through this machine into the legitimate machine, and they're acquiring all the information. What happens is somebody, after a few hours of it being there, comes and removes it, and they've either downloaded all the information or it was wirelessly transferred to their computer, and they then can make up fraudulent charge cards with all your information, and they have your PIN code. And they have groups of people that will go around and go purchase like $1 worth of bubble gum and do an automatic withdrawal cash back for $200, let's say. And they repeatedly do this over and over and over again to get out thousands of dollars over a period of time. Here's another video for you.
Here at the Federal Trade Commission, we see a lot of different scams, but all scammers want to get your money as quickly as possible in a way that makes it hard to trace them and hard for you to get your money back. I'm going to tell you about some of the common ways scammers want you to pay. Once you know them, you'll know how to spot a scam, and you'll know to be careful if someone asks you to pay that way. First, there's wiring money. Somebody might call you, maybe about a prize you won, a loved one in trouble, or because you supposedly owe taxes or some kind of fee. The story sounds real, and maybe even alarming. The person on the phone rushes you to Western Union or MoneyGram to send the money. But wiring money is like sending cash. You'll almost never get it back, and scammers know that. Another favorite of scammers are gift cards or cash reload cards. Here's how it works. Those same people call, and again, there's a prize, a family emergency, or some fee they want you to pay. They tell you to go to the store and put money on a gift card, like an iTunes card, or a cash reload card, like MoneyPack, Vanilla Reload, or Reload It. Sometimes they'll even stay on the phone with you while you go to the store. Once your money's loaded onto the card, they'll ask for the card's registration numbers. That lets them get the money right away, and you're left with nothing. So now you know, if anyone ever says you have to wire money or pay them with a gift card or cash reload card, that's a scam. No matter who they say they are or how urgent it seems, stop, get off the phone, talk to someone, and then tell us at ftc.gov/complaint.
I have one more video here, and then we'll go into talking. I want to talk a little bit about that as well.
My dad started off in the Dominican Republic as a DJ 60 some odd years ago. He was the first Dominican actually in the United States to own a radio station. Radio Cumbre has been here for 27 years. We're a family-run business. We're a music format, but we really have a very strong community focus. We're probably close to 40% Hispanic here. It was a Saturday morning, and I had a phone call from my sister. She had gotten a phone call from someone saying that my brother had gotten into a car accident and hit a kid. They needed money to get him out. Not long after that, I'm sitting at my parents' house, and my dad gets a phone call. The person said, "Hey, abuelo, it's your favorite grandson. You know, I'm in Manhattan. I got into a car accident. I need your help." My nephew lives in Florida. He's a college student.
Con artists are very, very good at pretending to be people that they are not. The first thing they do is get you into a state of panic and fear. They don't want you to be thinking very carefully. They'll convince you that your relative is in trouble, somebody that you love is in trouble, and that you can help them. And you can help them by sending money. Don't do it. It's a scam.
It got me really upset, and that's where, I decided, I was like, we've got to come in and do something about this so that other people don't have to do this. What we did was put it in as a news piece during our morning show. We wanted to make the public aware this was happening in our community, that people were getting calls, that the Hispanic community was being targeted.
These scams can target very specific communities. So when it's happening to you, chances are it's happening to people you know, people you love. So tell other people about it, warn them. By talking about it, telling these stories, you're helping to protect not just yourself, but your whole community. Pablo did a terrific thing. He shared his story. He shared it far and wide. He got it on the radio. And by doing that, he reached hundreds, thousands of people who were able to hear about this scam. Once you know about the scam, you can avoid it.
I like that video because that sort of touches home. That's right here in Bridgeport, Connecticut, that took place. But it's happening all across the country. And as they mentioned in the video, they're trying to get you into a panic, because if they can get you panicked, that if you don't act quickly, something bad is going to happen to someone you care about. That should be a clue. Let's go on here. So I want to touch base real quick on the home improvement scam. I know I talked about this last time as well, but one of the things I will say about home improvements is make sure that you find a reliable contractor to work on your house. Somebody that is licensed with the state of Connecticut, somebody that has references, somebody that will provide you with a copy of their license and references that you can reach out to and speak with. I absolutely recommend calling contractors' references and asking them questions about the work that was done, how long ago they worked there, were they happy with the work? Just get into a conversation if the person is willing to speak with you to find out what type of person this contractor is. I also recommend going to, and I know it's quick here, but the state of Connecticut has a website, which I put here in red, which allows you to look up the license of any contractor here in the state of Connecticut. You can see if there are any complaints made about the contractor. So it's a good reference to go to make sure that you have a legitimate contractor and that their license is truly valid. Just so you're aware, if you hire a contractor, they are required to give you a signed contract detailing the work that they are going to do on your house or your condo. It must be in writing, and it must state on the contract that you have a 3-day cancellation policy. That is state law. You have up to 3 days to be able to cancel a contract. So make sure that you get that contract signed by the contractor detailing the work, and that it states on there you have a 3-day cancellation policy. In the town of Wilton, if a contractor or a solicitor goes to your house in an attempt to get you to do business with them, they must have a solicitor's permit. That permit must be visible. It must be around their neck. They must show it to you upon arrival or have it visible upon their arrival at your house. If somebody comes to your door and they're asking to try to talk to you about selling you a product, and they don't have that permit, give us a call at the police department. We want to come introduce ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is never pay for a job in full until the job is completed. You know, I know sometimes it's easier to just say, hey, let me just write you a check for the whole job so I don't have to worry about it. But you want to make sure that you're going to be satisfied with the work and the contractor is not going to just disappear. If you're holding some of the money till the end, that gives you some leverage. So make sure you don't pay for a job in full until it's completed and you're satisfied with the job. Now with contractors, there's a few scams that we see, and I've gotten them at my house, and people coming around when they come knocking on the door and they say, hey, I just happened to have, I was doing work in the neighborhood and I just happened to have leftover material. If you wanted me to do your driveway, I could do it for a really good price. Time out. That's probably a scam, because my next question is going to be, one, where's your solicitor's permit? Two, where in the neighborhood were you working? What kind of work were you doing? Give me the name of the person you're doing the work for and their phone number, because I don't believe you're doing work in the neighborhood. Most business people can figure out pretty close to how much material they need for a job, especially when it comes to driveway paving. So if they have enough leftover material that they can now come do your driveway, that's probably not a very good, they're probably not that business savvy. So I would be scared of what corners they would cut if they were to even do anything. They may say, hey, if you give me a $3,000 deposit right now, we'll come back with extra material tomorrow and do the job. Don't do it. What water company scams, and I know I put water company, but it can be any type of utility. The next one is going to talk about power company scams. The idea is sometimes somebody will come and say they're from the water company and distract you at the front door trying to talk to you. There could be somebody, if they're not legitimately from the water company, there could be somebody going around back trying to come in the back door to go in and steal stuff in the house while they're distracting you at the front door. If they seem like they're really working hard to keep your attention at the front door, that should be a sign that something's not right. The other question you have to ask yourself is, do you even have city water? Because if you're on well water, then the water company wouldn't be coming to your house anyways, right? They should have their company ID displayed. And I would not let them in your house unless you're expecting somebody from that company to be coming by. Please give us a call if this happens. Power company, same thing. The power company type scam works a little bit differently. Back several years ago when we had the hurricanes come through town and we had a lot of power lines down and 50 or 60% of the town was without power, there were scam artists going around the state of Connecticut saying, hey, we're in your area, we're working around the corner. If you want to pay this restoration fee of $365 right now, I'll pull my crew off that job and we'll come over here and we'll get your power on right now for you. So people are like, of course I want the power. I'm lose everything in my refrigerator if I don't get the power back on, right? I don't have a generator. So you write a check and they take the check and off they go. You never need to pay a fee to get your power turned back on during a storm. And the reason your power may not come on as quickly as you would want it would be because the power lines are set up in certain grids. And depending on where the power is knocked out is going to dictate where they have to go next to turn the power on. So a power company may not actually be able to come and turn on your power. So never pay a fee for the power company coming to turn on your power during a storm. We talked the videos before talked about gift cards. Nobody should be taking gift cards as payment. Now, if I have a good friend who's a contractor and decides he's going to do some work for me, he's a family friend, I know him, and he says, hey, just pay me with gift cards, that's something different. And I have had people who've told me that they've had friends who wanted to do that. But 99.9% of the time when somebody says, pay with a gift card, it's a scam. Some of the most recent scams we've seen with the gift cards is the family member scam. Hey, Johnny's in the hospital, or hey, grandma, or hey, grandpa, I know I haven't spoken in a while, but I'm in jail and I need help. And they say, it doesn't sound like you. Is this Billy? Yeah, it's me, Billy. Well, Billy, it doesn't sound like you. I'm sorry, I was in a car accident and now I'm in jail, and to get out, I need X amount of dollars. No, it doesn't work like that. Police departments don't accept gift cards for bond payments. So again, I'm going to go back to, if somebody wants to be paid with a gift card, walk away. What I always recommend are fast no's and slow yeses. If somebody's pressuring you, be quick to say no. If you're going to say yes to something, slow it down, do your research and make sure that it's legitimate. If the person rushes you, no should be your answer up front. If somebody's trying to scare you, no should be your answer up front. There's almost no situation where you must pay money that exact second to stop something bad from happening. If a family member's in the hospital is going to do what they need to do to take care of that person. If a family member is supposedly in jail, they're not going to be hurt. They're in a safe cell. They're sitting there. There's no need. And first off, we don't take payment for bond money over the phone anyways. So those fast no's, slow yeses. If somebody tells you that
Maybe they're selling the one next door.
Which one?
Number
if
5.
somebody says that
They got all those pink tags all over the place.
That must be it. So we'll have a neighbor next door.
Number 5, Uncle
All right.
the one with the pond, Stewart's house. There's pink tags all over the property. Umpqua, our backyard, Peaceable Street.
All right. So I'm going to go on here. If somebody tells you that you shouldn't tell anybody about what's going on, that should be a clue too. If somebody's trying to get you to hush and not say anything, that should be a sign that you should go tell everybody. Go tell your neighbors, talk to family, talk to friends. Call us here at the police department. Tell us what's going on. We'll take a look at what's happening and determine if it's legitimate or not and try to help you out. Back to that old saying, if something is too good to be true, it probably is. It's a scam. So slow down. Don't be pushed into making quick payments. Legitimate bill collectors do not threaten. They do not harass. They do not intimidate or cause you to fear inaction to what they tell you to do. Legitimate bill collectors have laws that they must follow to make sure that they collect debts legally. And by threatening people or harassing people, that is not legal. So that should be a sign that that is a potential scam. Came up with this little saying here, made up my own word, de-stress. So first you need to determine that something is wrong. You need to stop once you realize there's something wrong. Take a step back, because this is where you're going to be able to reassess the situation, report to the authorities, engage with your family and friends, make sure you sever the communications with the scam artist, and secure your personal information. I can tell you I've been at people's houses before who were being scammed by, for this particular scam, it was the Jamaican lottery scam. And the scam artist was calling the gentleman while we were standing in the kitchen. And when we got on the phone and introduced ourselves, the scam artist could have cared less that the police were there. It's because they're not in the United States, so there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do to them. And they kept calling the individual over and over and over again, because at some point we're going to leave and they're going to call him and he was going to pick up again. And the concern was that he was then going to fall for the scam at some point or give out his personal information. So that's why it's so important to engage with family and friends and to sever that communication with the scam artist. So where should you go for help and guidance if you feel you have been scammed or somebody is trying to scam you? Well, first off, the Wilton Police Department is here. We're here open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We always have officers available, so you can call a routine phone number. Don't call 911 unless you have an emergency where you need the police to respond right away. But you can call the routine phone number and speak to one of our officers or dispatchers who are working the desk, and we can have an officer come out and see you at your house and go over the situation and help you file the necessary paperwork to protect yourself. You should talk with your family and friends. They can be a good source of information to help you determine whether or not this truly was a scam. And then before, some of the videos that I showed were from the Federal Trade Commission. That's a great place to go to. The ftc.gov has a lot of good information on how to avoid being scammed and how to file a complaint if you feel you have been scammed. And then there's also the Department of Consumer Protection. As I mentioned before, we talked about contracts and what contractors are required to do here in the state of Connecticut. There are a lot of other laws that they're required to follow as well, but those that I mentioned are some of the more important ones. And then here in Wilton, we have Wilton Social Services and Wilton Senior Center. Need to put Stephanie's phone number up there. The IRS, obviously, if you feel that there's been a problem with your Social Security number or your tax return. And then one of the things you want to do is to protect your credit, and the 3 credit bureaus are right here. This is all information I can send over to somebody at Stay at Home in Wilton if you would like the phone numbers and information so that you can put a freeze on the credit bureaus if you feel that somebody has opened accounts in your name. The Social Security Administration. Again, I'm throwing a lot of information here, not expecting you to write all this down. I can certainly get all this contact information over to you. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, let me try to stop my, all right. So one of the scams that we've seen since COVID-19, people were receiving phone calls saying that if you paid a fee up front, that you could be put first in line to get the COVID vaccine when it came out. Obviously, that was a scam because that's not how the government was going to do it. Many of you I've seen at the vaccination clinics since I've worked just about every one of them. The government had a system on a way that they were going to do it based upon age. And so those were obvious scams. And then during COVID-19, we saw a lot of scams with people calling up about masks and the N95 masks, which were the masks that we use as first responders on calls when we do have to go into a residence or a facility that somebody could be COVID positive. So those are other types of COVID-19 scams that we've been seeing. So with that, I'll turn it back over and answer any questions that people may have.
I have a question. Dave, you talked about those machines where you scan your card and they're fake. They put right over another scanner. Is there any
the skimming devices?
Yeah. Is there any way we can give us an idea what they would? I see what it looks like, but how would we identify one that's fake?
That's a great question. And one of the things that I did forget to mention is anytime I go up to a device where I'm going to be paying with my credit card, whether it's in the supermarket, the gas station, I'm taking money out of the ATM, I always grab the device where my card is going in, and I'll shake it a little bit. Because if it's a skimming device, there's a high probability it'll pop off. Because the scammers come up and they stick it to the side of the machine and then they leave. And if they had to take a long time to attach it, they have a greater chance of being caught either while they're installing it or as they're taking it off. So I always grab the device and I give it a little shake to see if it pops off. If it were to pop off, it's a skimming device. I don't shake it strong enough to obviously break the machine, but I do give it a little tug to make sure that it is firmly attached and part of the actual unit itself. And that's what I would recommend you do. That's what I recommend to my wife that she does when she goes to the gas station and the stores as well.
What about like the Apple Pay where you're putting your phone up to it? Is there any issues that you've had with that?
I have not seen any scams with Apple Pay personally. I am not familiar with them. To be honest, I've never used Apple Pay personally, but I have not seen scams with Apple Pay. Now, that's not to say that there aren't scams out there. We just may not have seen them here at the police department yet.
I have two questions.
Sure.
You're fairly new. What is the non-emergency number for the police department, please?
Sure, it's 203 834 6260.
Great.
And like I said, you can call it any hour.
And then my second question is, I've been getting a lot of obvious scam texts lately, 2, 3 more a day. I block the number and then I delete the text. Is there anything else I should do?
Well, that's good. And one of the things I will say is with those texts that you get, do not click on the links that they provide you within those texts.
Right.
It could put a virus on your phone. It could send you to a website that is a phishing website. They're going to try to get your personal information. I do exactly what you do because I get them as well. I delete them. I block them. The one thing that is tricky with a lot of these numbers that come in is people can put up whatever phone number on the device with the technology that's out there. So it might be a digital phone number. It might not be the legitimate phone number that it's coming from. It might be over the internet. So you may still get some of those same scams from different numbers, but just don't open the links and continue to delete them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thanks, Lieutenant Hartman. It was really
Wayne,
great.
looks like Wayne might have a question there.
Okay. Cool.
Let's see. Wayne, are you able to unmute?
He's muted.
Say, I have a
Can
scammer.
you hear me now?
Can you
Yeah,
hear-
just the number of phone calls that are, I mean, I left the phone while you were talking. I had a phone call right here and I grabbed it and went in the other room and it was a hoax, scam one. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
5 and 6 a day. I mean, it's
Well,
awful.
real quick, what I'll tell you that I do, and I'm not endorsing any particular company, but I do have an app that I put on my personal cell phone to block scam phone calls. It recognizes phone calls that are coming in from my address book, and it has a list of phone numbers that are commonly used for scams, and it will actually prevent my phone from ringing when it comes from a number that it doesn't recognize, and it'll put them into a voicemail. Most of the time they hang up.
What's the name of
So
the
that's
app?
one of the things that I'd have to go look. I don't have it, I don't have it right here. But like I said, I don't want to endorse any particular companies. There are a bunch of them out there. And so what I would say is, you could look through, let me see, I'd have to find the name of it. It's like Robo Killer or something like that. But there are other ones out there similar to that will block spam phone calls.
On your home phone, would you advise to just not pick up until the person leaves a voicemail? Just don't pick
I
up.
don't pick up any phone calls that I don't recognize. If I don't recognize a phone number and you're not in my address book, you won't get me to answer. If it's important and you're somebody that I need to speak with, leave a message and I'll call you right back. I have a history of putting all the phone numbers into my phone for people that I do business with or I talk with or I may need to speak with. So if you call me, I should have your phone number. And like I said, if it's a different phone number, I'll leave me a message and I will call you back. Wayne, you had a question?
Okay, I have a scammer that's been calling me for 2 to 3 years. He's from a publishing house. I only talked with him once, and he said I had won some big prize. But I have a cell blocking, a phone scam blocking system on my phone. But what he does is he keeps changing his calling numbers. So it's, sometimes I try to write them down and recognize them. And is there anything I can do except I don't answer the call, but it's annoying. Sometimes he'll call twice on the day.
Yeah, it's really hard to, and this is one of the problems in law enforcement that we're seeing with these scammers is because they can change the numbers and keep calling you from different phone numbers. I think you're doing the right thing by not answering the phone. If you engage the scammer, that's exactly what he wants, and he's going to continue to call you. I think you need to make sure you don't answer the phone if you don't recognize who it's calling from. And then I would continue to block the different phone numbers that are coming in if you have the ability to do that with your phone provider.
Right. A second, just a general interest. I have noted that there are some scammers that come up with a call number, it's 203-762, you know, and you think it's local, somebody from Wilton. So sometimes you
Sure.
answer it.
No, they do. They can, like I said, they can put any phone number up there. And if you can find just about anything on anybody online. So if I was to have your name and approximately where you lived, I could just go put that into a search engine on the internet, and I could have all this information on you. And if I knew you lived in a particular area, I could put in the area code or the local 3-digit number to the town you live in, and I could make it look like it's coming from somebody in the town. So that's why it's important. If you don't recognize a number, just have them leave a message. If it's really important, you call them right back. All right. I'm going to try to get some of this information over to Stay at Home in Wilton, and with the phone numbers and the contact information. I'm going to give out my phone number. I gave it out for the police department. Feel free to give me a call here at any time if you need assistance, or if there's anything I can do to help you, or if you feel that you're being scammed. And certainly myself or one of the officers here at the department will be more than happy to come out and help you determine whether it's a scam or not.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great information.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Certainly. More than happy to be here, and I greatly appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
So Will, are you ready to go on?
I am. First of all, Lieutenant Hartman, thank you. I'm so glad that I caught most of your presentation, and thank you for all that you're doing to keep us safe. And Sally, thanks for having me and being flexible about the schedule. These days with virtual legislating, you never know when a surprise amendment is going to pop up and you have to hop into another Zoom room. So I really appreciate everybody's flexibility. I see a lot of familiar faces on the screen, but for those who I haven't had a chance to meet before, my name is Will Haskell. I represent the 26th District in the State Senate. Those are the towns of Westport, Wilton, Weston, Ridgefield, Reading, Bethel, and New Canaan. And what originally prompted Sally to invite me to speak with all of you is a bill that we're working on in Hartford that intersects really nicely, I believe, with what Lieutenant Hartman and the Wilton Police Department are doing to protect against spammers. Specifically, it's House Bill 6410 in the Energy and Technology Committee. I'm new to this committee. I sought a seat on the Energy and Technology Committee because I feel strongly that we need to do more to regulate Eversource and improve customer service for our utilities. But I was pleased that within the cognizance, within the umbrella of the Energy and Technology Committee, falls the issue of spam phone calls. And just personally, I've seen what feels like an explosion over the last year in terms of how many phone calls I get on my cell phone every day. And the central problem ever since the initial Telephone Consumer Protection Act of 1991 passed is that it is a clunky and burdensome and arduous process to pass regulations and legislation. And the technology that these individuals who perpetrate spams use is rapidly evolving. So it's really challenging for the government effectively to keep up with all these spam phone calls and keep our constituents safe. That being said, we do have something called the National Do Not Call Registry. I'm sure folks are familiar. You can go to donotcall.gov and add your name and your number to make sure that you are on that list. And it won't work overnight. You'll still probably get some spam phone calls. Maybe you'll get fewer. I personally get fewer ever since I joined that list. But for those who ignore the do not call list, our bill, HB 6410, would dramatically increase the violations for unsolicited phone calls who are on that no call list, violations including if you use a blocking device to circumvent a caller ID. So Wayne, exactly the sort of technology that you were referencing. It establishes a minimum fine of $5,000 and actually a maximum fine of $42,530. I don't know why it's such a specific number, but that's per call. So the idea is that for these houses that are sending out dozens or hundreds or even thousands of calls a day, this creates a real financial incentive to abide by the do not call list. It's, in my view, the best way that we can keep up with this change in technology and with this evolving threat. So I'm a co-sponsor on the bill. It made it out of the Energy and Technology Committee. The way things work in Hartford now is the committee process is just wrapping up, and then things sit for some time, usually 2 or 3 weeks on either the Senate or the House floor waiting to be debated. And then the legislative session will wrap up in June, which means that the end of May is going to be a flurry of activity trying to pass this bill. And I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that this one gets across the finish line. You know, there were a few other issues, though, that I thought I would bring up today, just because Lieutenant Hartman covered the spam phone call one so thoroughly. I was trying to think about what other topics might be of interest to this group. And most importantly, I'm eager to answer any of your questions. I will do my best to provide answers, although it's challenging given that the legislative session is far from over and there are changes every day, even as we speak. I've got one eye on the Judiciary Committee meeting, and I apologize if I have to pop out to vote. But I did want to flag a bill that recently passed in the state Senate, and it's now sitting on the floor of the House of Representatives, and hopefully will be signed into law by the governor this year, that would address age discrimination in the workplace. Folks may know that Connecticut has one of the oldest workforces in the country. 25% of Connecticut's workforce is 55 or older. And as our demographics shift, I think it's important that we address the problem of discrimination against potential new hires simply because of their age. Of course, discrimination is already technically illegal, but there are loopholes in our laws that allow older workers to become vulnerable to bias when they apply for a job. Specifically, what this bill does is it prohibits an employer from asking for an applicant for information regarding their age or, interestingly, their date of birth or graduation date, since that is a clear giveaway or a proxy for their age, unless, of course, that information is related to an occupational qualification. But otherwise, they won't be allowed to ask for that. And of course, this is championed by the AARP, which found in a survey just in 2018 that 60% of older workers saw or experienced age discrimination in the workplace. Over 75% of them saw their age as a hurdle to finding a new job. We should be doing everything we can to help highly skilled Connecticut workers, regardless of their age, to connect with employers in our area who are so desperate for a 21st century workforce. And I was proud to vote for that bill last week in the Senate, and I hope it will soon become law. The last bill that I wanted to mention before opening it up to absolutely anything that you'd like to talk about is a brief explanation for why I was late. In the Judiciary Committee today, a bill was defeated that I really care tremendously about. And I have to confess that I didn't care so much about this bill, or I should say I didn't know so much about this bill when I was first elected. But the best part of this job is learning from your constituents and listening to your constituents. And I heard from family members who had watched a loved one suffer in their final days due to a terminal diagnosis. I spoke with folks who themselves have a terminal diagnosis and are very concerned about what the future may hold. 11 other states across the country have passed some sort of legislation, alternatively called dignity in death or aid in dying, that essentially says if you have a terminal diagnosis of 6 months or less, and if 2 separate doctors decide that you are of sound mind and body, and if you make repeated written and oral requests, and if you self-administer your medication, well, then you can end your own life in a manner of your choosing, in a way that's comfortable for you, in a way that upholds your dignity and allows you to be the author of your final chapter. I supported the bill in the Public Health Committee, having heard from so many folks in my community who cared so deeply about this bill. And then the bill was referred to the Judiciary Committee, and it looks like, although the meeting isn't over, it looks like we're going to fall short this afternoon. And it's one of those days where I'm feeling a little bit pessimistic about politics. Hope springs eternal. Maybe the bill will survive this legislative session, or perhaps we'll have to bring it up again next year. But I did just want to share why I was late, why I care about that bill, and why, if I have the opportunity, and if the bill doesn't pass this year, why I'll continue fighting for it in the future. Of course, nobody should be forced into making this decision, and no doctor who has a deeply held religious belief, or even a hospital system with a deeply held religious affiliation, should be forced to administer this procedure. But it's about making sure that patients can make their own choices about their own final days, and that they can pass in a manner that's dignified. Anyways, I've gone on for longer than I expected. I wanted to cover those 3 issues, but really what I wanted to do is answer any and all questions that this group has.
What is the bill number of the bill you just spoke about that doesn't look like it's going to get through?
Oh, the dignity and death bill. You know what? Let me find that for you right now. It's a House bill, and I'll pull it up momentarily for you.
Okay, thank you.
No problem at all. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I have to pop out of this meeting to go vote on that bill, but we've been caucusing it all day, and it seems as though folks have a religious objection, which, by the way, I am completely respectful of. This option is not for everybody. I went to a Catholic college down in DC, as did Sally. We missed each other by a year or two, but I have the utmost respect for those who have a personal religious objection to this, but surely their religious beliefs shouldn't dictate the medical choices of others. At least that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. Similar to abortion, it's got to be that person's choice.
Right. While I pull up this bill number, is there another question that, by the way, it doesn't have to be on the 3 bills that I mentioned. I thought those might be of particular interest, but there are thousands of bills proposed every year. So of course, feel free to ask about any of them, and I'll do my best to get you an answer.
Will, I have a question on that one bill that you discussed, which is HB 6410.
I think it's a Senate bill.
No, that's a House bill. Does that include the cable companies?
No, I wish that it did include the cable companies. Unfortunately, there was by the way, I apologize. It's HB 6425 is the aid and dying legislation. It's currently before the Judiciary Committee, 6425. So I would love to regulate the cable companies in Connecticut. And we're hoping we'd be able to do so in the Energy and Technology Committee. Unfortunately, in the 1990s, there was a massive deregulation of telecommunications, and what is essentially a federal preemption is still in place. So the FCC, which by the way, I think produced those great videos that Lieutenant Hartman showed earlier, the FCC holds the sole responsibility and power. And until Congress decides to change that, and I so hope they do, states are not really able to regulate telecoms. And we run into this when we try to pass net neutrality legislation. We run into it when we try to improve customer service, when we try to increase competition in the marketplace, which is going to bring down rates for everybody. It's tremendously frustrating, and it's one of so many issues where I would like to see some major action in Washington, D.C.
Just to comment about the cable company, I just got my new bill today, and I calculated out an 11% increase compared to what I paid the previous month.
It's outrageous, and it's all the utilities, frankly. It's the cable companies, and it's I've spent a lot of time criticizing Eversource, and I'm trying to become friends with the new CEO. He has assured the legislature that he's going to bring a customer service orientation, whereas the last gentleman was seemingly solely focused on delivering for shareholders and maximizing profits, cutting the number of in-state crews, reducing the amount of tree trimming that they do. Their new CEO has promised that he's going to put an emphasis on responding to storms efficiently, on bringing down energy prices, on supporting renewable projects. Eversource has a team of incredibly powerful lobbyists who fight every single effort to support community shared solar, which Wilton, by the way, is in the queue for, meaning they would love to participate in a community shared solar program that would bring down prices for everybody and especially save taxpayer dollars. But it's capped the number of projects that we're currently allowed to permit. And that cap is strongly supported and lobbied for every year by Eversource. So there's a lot of changes that are needed for in the realm of our utilities. I want to hold cable companies accountable. Since we're not able to do so, I'm going to spend a lot of time trying to hold Eversource accountable where we do have a little bit more leverage.
Keep fighting.
Thank you, Wayne.
Anything new in the horrible area of gun control with all this mayhem that's been going on, it seems like daily? Any hope whatsoever?
Yeah, it has been so disturbing this last few weeks, and of course it's the mass shootings that make national headlines. But I was talking to my colleagues who represent Hartford. Their community is just reeling from the death of a 3-year-old shot by somebody under the age of 20. It is a real pandemic of gun violence that's impacting our urban communities, and and it's not that far from where we live, but I'm very guilty of tweeting about Parkland and tweeting about issues that happen elsewhere, and sometimes ignoring the tragedy that's just around the corner. I'll tell you about a bill I proposed that isn't moving forward this year, and I'll tell you about a bill that is moving forward. I'll end with optimism. Here's the bill that I proposed that hasn't moved forward. When you're approved to buy a gun in the state of Connecticut, it doesn't say when you pass a background check, you're not approved to buy a gun. There's no limit on the number of handgun purchases that you can make when visiting a gun store, right? And most people don't buy multiple guns at once, but some people do. And when they go into a store and make a bulk purchase of a dozen or 2 dozen handguns, the likelihood that that handgun is going to be used in a criminal manner increases dramatically. It increases by 64%. And that's because those guns are ultimately sold through a straw purchase. The person who passed the background check and can purchase 12 or 20 guns then brings it into an urban community and sells those handguns into the hands of those who would not pass a background check. And those straw purchases just perpetuate this cycle of urban gun violence. I think that Connecticut ought to follow the example. I love this job because you get to look at 49 other states, what to do and what not to do. I spend a lot of time looking at other state laws. And California, New Jersey, and Maryland have all significantly reduced gun violence in urban communities by restricting the number of gun purchases to 1 per person per month. A lot of gun owners in my family who love hunting, they've never had to purchase more than 12 guns a year, right? It's a pretty reasonable restriction to say 1 gun per person per month. And when you do that, you dramatically reduce the likelihood of straw purchases by cutting down on bulk purchases. That bill didn't move forward this year. I don't want to be too political, but I'll just say that there was a well-financed interest group that, you know, we've all heard about that opposes gun violence prevention measures like this one. So if I have the opportunity to go back to Hartford, I'm going to keep fighting for that one as a member of the Judiciary Committee. Here's a really important bill that does move forward. In the 1990s, Connecticut passed our extreme risk protection order. It's called a red flag law colloquially, and I'm sure Lieutenant Hartman's familiar. If you are concerned that somebody might be a danger to themselves or to others, and you believe that they have a gun at home, you can call it into the local police department, and the local police department has certain rights in terms of taking away that weapon, that firearm, so that it can't be used in a dangerous manner for a certain amount of time until there's a public hearing. The problem, as I understand the law is written, which was groundbreaking in the 1990s, is that other states have done more and done better when they followed our example. They passed laws that said law enforcement officers would not only have the ability to take away a gun that was at the home and poses a danger to an individual or to his or her family, but also to prevent them from requiring new guns. And we know that this is especially a problem in instances of domestic violence, where having a gun at home dramatically increases the likelihood that domestic violence has deadly consequences. All that to say that there's an ERPO reform passing through committee this year that I'm a co-sponsor of. I strongly support. It says that if you've been flagged by law enforcement officers and they've taken away your firearms, you shouldn't be able to go out and purchase a new firearm. Makes all the sense in the world. Of course, it's going to be strongly opposed anyways, but we're going to work hard to fight it.
How do you work every day with people who value guns more than they value, well, after Sandy Hook, the lives of little children?
You know, some days I smile through my job because every committee meeting is wonderful. Today's one of those really frustrating days where you put in so much work on something and it falls through. But for better or for worse, we're going to get up tomorrow and we're going to work on what's coming up for a vote tomorrow. Whether or not public school students should be vaccinated, something that I strongly believe in, right? I mean, I only bring this up to say that disappointments don't last for very long because there are dozens of bills proposed every day, dozens of bills considered, and I try not to dwell on the setbacks, but then, think about what we're going to be voting on tomorrow because there's so much to do.
I have a question.
We're going to be trying to vote on whether or not electric vehicles should be sold in Connecticut, whether or not we should do more to get electric buses into our towns so that we stop pumping diesel exhaust into the lungs of children. I mean, there's just so much to do that, anyways, I try not to dwell on the setbacks, although there are many.
I have a question. What about assault weapons? Is there anything about banning them for people who shouldn't have guns?
Yeah, in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy, I claim no credit for this because I was in high school at the time, but in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy, the legislature passed really strong assault weapons bans and other gun violence prevention measures. And, to my colleagues' credit, actually, it was bipartisan. I think that that's wonderful. What we really need now is for the rest of the nation to follow suit. And the other reason that I love working in state government, other than the fact that you can look at 49 other examples, is that we can serve as a model, right? We can, Justice Louis Brandeis said that states would be laboratories of democracy. We have an opportunity to be laboratories of compassion and encourage and standing up to the NRA on these issues and showing the rest of the country that what works here could work everywhere. Senator Chris Murphy is fighting. You'll see him on the Senate floor on almost any given day, talking about gun violence prevention and bringing an assault weapons ban to all 50 states. And he's able to point to Connecticut and talk about the fact that the laws that we've passed here have in fact saved lives, have resulted in a decrease in gun violence. It hasn't eradicated it, but it's brought it down.
What is it about the psyche of this country? For example, you probably are familiar with Australia, where they had a huge gun buyback, and then because there was one mass murder, I forget how many, 20 years ago, and then everyone gave back their guns, and guess what? There's rarely do you ever hear of a shooting or a gun incident in Australia. So what makes Americans so different from Australia? Why couldn't we do that? I mean, I'm fantasizing here, but
no, but I don't know if you guys follow The Onion, the satirical news site, they publish after every one of these mass shootings the very same headline. How can we put an end to this as the only country in the world where this happens? I'm paraphrasing slightly, but I think they hit the nail on the head when they say that. I'll tell you about one other gun violence prevention bill that I thought was going to sail through. I proposed it in 2019. I proposed it in 2020 and 2021. Maybe 2022 will be the year. But right now in Connecticut, if you have a license to, well, let me start over. If I'm driving and Lieutenant Hartman pulls me over because I'm driving too quickly, he can ask to see my driver's license, of course. If I'm carrying a handgun, whether open or concealed, a law enforcement officer is not currently allowed to verify that that person has an open or concealed carry permit. What I've heard from police chiefs, 35 of whom testified in support of the bill, is that they can't do their jobs in figuring out who's a good guy with the gun and who's a bad guy with the gun, because they're not able to stop somebody walking down the street to verify that they have the proper license to carry that weapon. That really should change. And the pushback to this has been, we don't want to increase policing in urban communities. I understand that, but surely there's a way that we can come together and compromise here to give law enforcement officers the tools they need to keep our communities safe. Lieutenant Hartman, I don't want to speak for you, but is that consistent with your understanding of the laws?
Yes, you're absolutely right. If somebody has a weapon that's exposed, we can ask them for a permit. They don't have to supply it. They can refuse to show us their documentation, which, as you said, makes it very difficult to know whether or not they're legally carrying or not. I mean, they could be a convicted felon walking down the road with a firearm and we wouldn't have a clue.
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Pretty crazy.
Lieutenant Hartman, how many people in Wilton own firearms?
I don't know the number to that. I don't know.
Don't they have to register somewhere if they have a firearm?
Yeah,
what happens is
No, sorry, go ahead, Lieutenant.
Sorry. No problem. I was just going to say, to purchase a firearm, you have to have a firearm permit. And when you purchase a new permit, they do a transfer paperwork that's forwarded to our police department, and we keep it in our records. That doesn't mean that we know specifically how many. I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head how many people have a valid permit in the town of Wilton. Yeah, so I wouldn't know how many people in Wilton have permits. I know how many permits we're supplying or putting out per week, but.
So what is that number?
Well, the exact number I'd have to check with the chief, but I'm sitting here by the front door of the police department, and I hear people every day coming in and picking up their local pistol carry permit, which then they would take to the state police to obtain their state carry permit. So I would say on a daily basis, we have 2 or 3 people coming through picking up their permits.
I think a couple of years ago, they published the numbers of citizens of Weston, Wilton, our neighboring towns, who possess guns, and it was in the thousands. I was shocked. I mean, I couldn't believe it, but it's not a small number.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure it's not. I'm sure a lot of people own firearms in town.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much time. And again, I apologize for having been late, but maybe if it's okay with you, Sally, if there's any other question, I'm happy to answer it. If not, let me just say that a core tenet, in my view, of being a state senator is being accessible. So I hope that you all feel free to reach out anytime. Sally has my cell phone. You can find my email address easily online. I can't possibly do this job unless I hear from all of you. And we represent a district that can feel far away from Hartford. Of course, it isn't all that far, but you'd be amazed. Sometimes when I go door knocking and I talk about the governor, people think I'm talking about Cuomo. We can feel a world apart from Connecticut, and I hope, I really hope in this position and in this opportunity that the community's given me to try to connect the folks in town with all of the good, the bad, the ugly that's happening in Hartford, and to get your perspective on it so that I can adequately be your voice in the state Senate. So please don't hesitate to reach out anytime. I'd love to hear from you. Oh, sorry. Is there another question, Anne? Oh, no.
Will, we just want to thank you for being so accessible. This is at least the 4th or 5th time you've come, and it's really nice to know that someone up in Hartford has an interest in seniors and in the challenges we have every day, because there are many. So thank you very much.
And thanks for everything you do. Thanks for everything you've done these last years.
Well, thank you guys so much. And next time, I hope it will be in person.
Yay.
Oh, yeah.
Here,
Hope
here.
so. A little coffee and
All
cake
right.
and chatter. Thank you, Will.
Thanks, Will.
Bye, everybody. Great to see you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you,
Take care,
Dave.
everybody.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
More than welcome.